Going public with the news that he had AIDS. In recent weeks, there was talk that the lead singer of the group Queen had that disease. Mercury said that he wouldn't confirm those rumors until the end for reasons of privacy.
Freddie Mercury left the world in silence, but the fight over his legacy never did. In 2025, the question isn't who inherited his fortune, but who truly controls his name, his image, and his voice. Decades after his death, his closest heirs stand at the center of a legacy worth millions and guarded with fierce devotion. So who is really preserving Freddie Mercury now, and who is reshaping his myth? When Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, at the age of 45, his final will quietly settled one of the most intimate questions surrounding his life: who he trusted most to safeguard everything he left behind. The answer was Mary Austin, his former fiancée and lifelong confidant, the woman Freddie once famously described as his common-law wife. Freddie's 1991 will made Mary the chief beneficiary of his estate, granting her the largest share of his personal wealth and responsibility. Though the two had not been romantically involved for many years, their bond never weakened. Freddie trusted Mary implicitly, not only with his property, but with the emotional weight of his memory. The will reflected that trust in unmistakable terms. Mary inherited Garden Lodge, Freddie's beloved home in Kensington, London, where he spent his final years and where he died. More than a residence, Garden Lodge was Freddie's private sanctuary, filled with his art, handwritten lyrics, rare furnishings, and deeply personal possessions. By leaving it to Mary, Freddie ensured that his most personal space would remain in the hands of someone who understood his need for privacy and dignity. Beyond the house, Mary received a very substantial share of Freddie's privately held assets and future earnings, including income tied to his work. While specific figures were never publicly detailed, the will clearly placed her at the center of Freddie's financial legacy. At the same time, Freddie also made provision for those closest to him. Cash legacies were left to trusted friends, while portions of the estate were allocated to his parents, Jair and Bomi Bulsara, and to his sister, Kashmira. This careful distribution reflected Freddie's desire to support his family while still prioritizing Mary as his principal heir. Perhaps the most personal element of the will concerned Freddie's remains. Mary was entrusted with the location of his ashes, a detail that has remained private to this day. By doing so, Freddie ensured that even in death, his final resting place would be protected from public intrusion. This decision underscored how deeply he valued discretion and how fully he trusted Mary to honor his wishes. In 1992, less than a year after Freddie Mercury's death, his bandmates and closest professional allies took decisive action to ensure that his name would stand not only for music, but for compassion and change. Brian May, Roger Taylor, and Queen's longtime manager Jim Beach founded the Mercury Phoenix Trust, MPT, as a dedicated AIDS charity, transforming Freddie's personal battle into a lasting force for global good. The timing of the trust's creation was deeply symbolic. Freddie's death in November 1991 had brought renewed public attention to the AIDS crisis at a moment when fear, stigma, and misinformation still dominated public discourse. By founding the Mercury Phoenix Trust in his name, May, Taylor, and Beach reframed Freddie's final chapter, not as a tragedy defined by illness, but as a catalyst for awareness, education, and action. The trust was conceived as a public-facing legacy institution, distinct from Freddie's private estate and personal affairs. While Mary Austin became the guardian of his intimate world, the Mercury Phoenix Trust became the vehicle through which Freddie's influence would reach far beyond Queen's music. Its mission was clear: to fight HIV/AIDS worldwide through funding, advocacy, and support for frontline organizations, particularly in communities most affected by the epidemic. From its earliest years, MPT positioned itself as more than a memorial fund. It actively channeled Queen's global visibility into philanthropy, using concerts, special releases, and partnerships to raise money and awareness. One of the Trust's earliest and most powerful moments came with the Freddie Mercury tribute concert for AIDS awareness in April 1992, which helped establish the Trust's credibility and international reach. The event not only honored Freddie's life but publicly aligned his name with compassion, courage, and activism. Over time, the Mercury Phoenix Trust evolved into one of the central institutional keepers of Freddie Mercury's public memory. Its work linked his artistry with humanitarian purpose, ensuring that his legacy extended beyond nostalgia or celebrity. By supporting hundreds of HIV/AIDS projects across multiple continents, the Trust embedded Freddie's name into ongoing, real-world impact. Importantly, the Trust also shaped how Freddie is remembered culturally. Rather than allowing his death to be reduced to rumor or sensationalism, MPT framed it as a call to empathy and responsibility. In doing so, it preserved Freddie Mercury not only as a rock icon, but as a symbol of resilience and generosity. Reportedly, after inheriting Garden Lodge, Freddie's Kensington residence, Mary made the deliberate decision to live there herself. For more than 30 years, the house remained her primary home, ensuring that Freddie's sanctuary did not become a museum, tourist attraction, or commercial asset. Garden Lodge had been Freddie's refuge from fame, and Mary preserved that spirit by maintaining its privacy, even as interest in Freddie's life and belongings grew steadily worldwide. Within Garden Lodge were Freddie's personal effects and private archives, handwritten lyrics, correspondence, artwork, clothing, furniture, and objects that reflected both his creative mind and his deeply private nature. By legal design and personal intent, Mary controlled these materials. She became the gatekeeper not only of physical items, but of stories, deciding what could be shared, when, and under what circumstances. This stewardship gave Mary extraordinary practical influence over how Freddie Mercury was understood beyond the stage. Biographers, journalists, filmmakers, and historians could not access key materials without her approval. In many cases, Mary chose silence over exposure. While this limited public insight, it also protected Freddie from posthumous exploitation and sensationalism, particularly during decades when public narratives around his sexuality, illness, and personal relationships were often intrusive or distorted. Mary's custodianship was defined by restraint rather than visibility. Unlike public institutions or celebrity estates that actively curate legacy through exhibitions or constant releases, Mary exercised control by withholding. Her approach reinforced the separation Freddie himself valued, the performer seen by millions and the private man known only to a few. Garden Lodge, under her care, remained a lived-in home rather than a shrine. At the same time, Mary's role did not erase Freddie from history. Instead, it shaped the pace and boundaries of how his private life entered the public record. What fans and historians could see was filtered through her judgment, preserving dignity at the cost of access. This made her one of the most powerful and least visible figures in Freddie Mercury's legacy. By the end of the 2000s, Mary Austin's decades-long presence at Garden Lodge had cemented her role as the silent steward of Freddie's inner world. Long after the music continued to echo globally, it was Mary who protected the rooms where it was born, ensuring that Freddie Mercury's private life remained exactly that, private. From 2018 onward, the stewardship of Queen's commercial and musical legacy entered a highly visible and carefully managed phase. With Freddie Mercury long gone, the responsibility for how his voice, image, and songwriting would continue to live in the public marketplace rested largely with Brian May, Roger Taylor, and Queen's longtime manager and business architect, Jim Beach. Together, they became the primary decision-makers shaping how Queen, and by extension Freddie, would be introduced to new generations. Although May and Taylor had overseen Queen's affairs for decades, the late 2000s marked a turning point. The release and global success of Bohemian Rhapsody in 2018 dramatically expanded Queen's audience, bringing Freddie Mercury's story to millions who had not lived through the band's original era. The film's approval, development, and rollout reflected the trio's approach to legacy management: protective, selective, and deeply conscious of brand integrity. Nothing bearing Freddie's name moved forward without their collective consent. Under this stewardship, major reissues, box sets, remasters, and archival releases were curated to balance authenticity with commercial appeal. Decisions about which performances to release, how to present unreleased material, and how to contextualize Freddie's work were shaped by both artistic judgment and long-term business strategy. Brian May and Roger Taylor acted as creative custodians, while Jim Beach functioned as the lead executive, coordinating licensing, negotiations, and global partnerships through Queen's established business structures. Beyond recorded music, Queen's legacy expanded across musicals, licensing agreements, brand collaborations, and digital platforms. Productions such as We Will Rock You and renewed interest in Queen's catalog across streaming services ensured that Freddie's songwriting remained economically powerful decades after his death. Each project required careful calibration: how to modernize Queen without diluting its identity, and how to keep Freddie present without turning him into a commercial caricature. Between 2018 and 2024, Freddie Mercury's musical legacy entered a new commercial era defined by unprecedented scale, corporate interest, and a reshaping of how artistic control intersects with global licensing power. The catalyst was the release of Bohemian Rhapsody in 2018, a film whose success far exceeded industry expectations and fundamentally altered the value and visibility of Queen's catalog. The film reignited worldwide fascination with Freddie Mercury, not only as a legendary performer, but as a cultural figure newly discovered by younger audiences. Streaming numbers surged, physical sales rebounded, and Queen's songs re-entered charts across multiple generations. This renewed demand transformed Queen's catalog from a historically valuable body of work into one of the most commercially powerful music assets in the modern marketplace. In the years that followed, attention shifted from celebration to consolidation. Major music corporations began aggressively pursuing legacy catalogs as long-term revenue engines, and Queen's body of work, deeply recognizable, globally evergreen, and freshly revitalized, became a prime target. By 2024, industry reporting revealed that Sony was in advanced talks to acquire Queen's catalog in a multi-hundred million to billion-dollar level transaction, one of the largest such negotiations in music history. Unlike simpler catalog sales, this deal was complex by design. Queen's rights structure involved multiple stakeholders: the surviving band members Brian May and Roger Taylor, the interests tied to Freddie Mercury's estate, and long-standing management oversight through Jim Beach. Any transaction required alignment across artistic, financial, and legacy considerations. The negotiations did not merely concern ownership. They addressed who would control licensing, synchronization, marketing, and long-term exploitation of Freddie's songs in film, advertising, streaming platforms, and emerging media formats. These talks marked a shift in stewardship. While Queen's members and Freddie's estate remained deeply involved, the potential transfer of catalog control to a major corporation represented a move toward large-scale institutional management. Under such arrangements, decisions about how Freddie's voice is used increasingly flow through corporate licensing strategies rather than solely artist-led discretion. At the same time, this transition did not erase the role of Queen's surviving members. Modern catalog deals are structured to preserve consultation rights, approvals, and narrative protection, ensuring that Freddie Mercury's work is not stripped of context or integrity. The balance lies in pairing global corporate reach with legacy guardianship, a hybrid model that defines the contemporary rights landscape. By 2024, Freddie Mercury's musical output had become both art and asset, preserved through contracts as much as memory. The era underscored a reality of modern legacy management: Freddie's songs now live within multinational frameworks, yet their meaning continues to be shaped by those who knew him, performed beside him, and were entrusted with his name. In fact, in September 2023, a profound shift occurred in the stewardship of Freddie Mercury's physical legacy. For the first time since his death, Mary Austin, the longtime custodian of Garden Lodge and Freddie's most intimate possessions, authorized a large-scale public unveiling of materials that had been kept private for more than 3 decades. The result was Sotheby's landmark exhibition and auction, Freddie Mercury, A World of His Own. The event was unprecedented in scope. Approximately 1,400 items from Garden Lodge were displayed to the public, transforming Freddie's former home life into a temporary museum experience. Personal handwritten lyrics, stage costumes, art collections, furniture, jewelry, handwritten notes, and everyday objects were shown, many never previously seen by fans, scholars, or the media. For decades, Mary had carefully controlled access to these items. By opening the archive, she fundamentally altered the boundary between Freddie's private world and public memory. The auction itself became one of the most successful celebrity sales in modern history, generating tens of millions of dollars. Collectors, institutions, and fans competed for pieces that represented not just musical history, but fragments of Freddie's daily life. Importantly, the sale was not framed as a simple liquidation. Portions of the proceeds were reportedly directed to AIDS-related charities, linking the dispersal of Freddie's possessions to the cause most closely associated with his final years and public legacy. This moment marked a turning point in custodianship. Items that had once been under the sole control of Mary Austin moved into private collections, museums, and institutional archives around the world. With that shift came a new reality. Freddie's physical artifacts would now be curated, exhibited, and interpreted by others, expanding access while relinquishing centralized control. For Mary, the decision carried symbolic weight. After more than 30 years of guarding Freddie's inner life, the auction suggested a closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. By choosing Sotheby's, and by contextualizing the sale through a curated exhibition rather than a discrete transaction, she shaped how the world encountered these objects. The presentation emphasized Freddie's taste, humor, creativity, and domestic life, reinforcing him as a complex individual rather than a distant icon. In the wake of the landmark Sotheby's auction, Freddie Mercury, A World of His Own. In September 2023, a quieter but highly significant chapter unfolded within Freddie Mercury's family. Reputable coverage in the years that followed reported that Kashmira Bulsara, Freddie's younger sister, also known in some records as Kashmira Cook, actively participated in the auction, spending substantial sums to reacquire items of deep personal and family value. Her actions signaled a renewed and visible role in the stewardship of her brother's material legacy. For decades, Kashmira had largely remained outside the public mechanisms governing Freddie's estate, while Mary Austin, as principal heir, controlled Garden Lodge and its contents. Kashmira represented the bloodline connection, the last immediate family member with lifelong memories predating fame, fortune, and global celebrity. The Sotheby's sale, which transferred hundreds of intimate objects into the marketplace, prompted her to intervene directly for the first time on a public stage. The items Kashmira reportedly sought were not framed as investments or collectibles, but as family artifacts, pieces that carried emotional meaning beyond their auction value. By bidding to bring select objects back into the family's hands, she asserted a parallel claim to Freddie's story, one rooted in shared childhood, heritage, and private memory, rather than legal designation alone. This moment also subtly highlighted the tensions inherent in Freddie Mercury's legacy structure. Legally, Mary Austin's authority over Freddie's possessions was unambiguous, established by his will and reinforced over decades. Yet the auction underscored how legal control and familial sentiment do not always align. Kashmira's participation did not challenge Mary's rights, but it revealed an emotional counterweight, a reminder that Freddie's legacy was never owned by one relationship alone. Between 2023 and 2025, Kashmira's actions were widely interpreted as a form of reclamation rather than confrontation. By selectively retrieving objects, she avoided public dispute while still protecting what she viewed as irreplaceable links to her brother. In doing so, she ensured that some elements of Freddie's world would remain within the family, insulated from private collectors or institutional reinterpretation. What do you think about Freddie Mercury's closest heirs? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.